One of the organizations that stands with Hamas is the International Kangaroo Court, also known as the ICC. This court is anti-American, it's anti-Israel, and it's anti-Semitic. The United States and Israel are not members of the ICC, and the court has absolutely no standing and no jurisdiction over our nation or the nation of Israel. This legislation would reimpose the Trump administration's sanctions against the ICC officials that investigate, arrest, detain, and prosecute U.S. citizens or allies like Israel. The choice is clear. Do you stand with our ally Israel, or do you stand with Hamas? Do you stand with this illegitimate court?
The idea that the ICC is some evil institution is totally contrary to fact. The International Criminal Court is an important institution, and it is not in America's moral or strategic interest to attack the court for doing its job. Should this bill pass, it would completely isolate us internationally, including and especially from our closest allies. It would deepen accusations of hypocrisy that have already caused a mind-boggling level of damage to the reputation of the United States, our diplomacy, and the entire range of our soft power capabilities. And I'm just completely astounded by how little my Republican colleagues seem to even care about the massive ramifications of this bill. No hearing at all. No witnesses, no markup, no nothing. The Republican who testified last night in the Rules Committee had no clue what was even in the bill. He told us he wasn't on the Committee of Jurisdiction, but he is. He didn't even know what the text of the bill was because the text kept on changing multiple times. Is that how you conduct business in the People's House? My Republican colleagues have turned this place into a joke. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to be managing this rule, and I'm glad that I'm allowed to speak on the floor again. As you remember, I was silenced 2 weeks ago for simply speaking the truth. That's right, I was muzzled from that very rostrum for daring to recite facts. And I can think of at least 34 new facts that could get my words taken down today, but I won't go there because I want to be allowed to say a few things without being canceled by the Republican majority for the high crime of merely speaking the truth. This rule contains two bills, both of which I think are lousy. First is the House Republicans' military construction appropriations proposal for fiscal year 2025. This should be one of the least controversial funding bills Congress passes each year. But this year, House Republicans are loading their funding bills with more culture war nonsense. The same attacks on abortion access, attacks on the LGBTQ+ community, attacks on diversity and inclusion efforts. We are talking about more narrow-minded, hateful MAGA riders that inject partisan politics into what should be a bipartisan bill. This bill also holds the VA back from protecting struggling veterans who may pose a danger to themselves or others. It would hamper efforts to prevent veterans from dying by suicide. And this bill zeroes out funding for climate change and resilience projects, something that will jeopardize our national security because it means our military installations will not be prepared for the realities of the climate crisis. And at the end of the day, this funding bill is full of poison pills that endanger our national security and threaten the quality of life for veterans, those who serve, and their families. Again, this should have been easy. This should have been a bipartisan bill where there'd be very little debate or little dissension, and they turned it into this horrific culture war bill filled with things that, quite frankly, are very divisive and have no business being in the military construction appropriations bill. Second on the agenda is H.R. 8282, a bill that imposes sanctions on the good people who work for the International Criminal Court and their families. Now, I know members have a variety of thoughts on this measure, but frankly, I think this is a bad bill. You know, the U.S. recognizes the jurisdiction and the legitimacy of the ICC and cooperates with the ICC in cases ranging from Sudan to Russia to the Lord's Resistance Army led by Joseph Kony. Fundamentally, this bill says that human rights don't matter In fact, it totally undermines the rules-based international order that America helped build. Now, let me be clear. I am already being challenged to explain U.S. double standards every time I meet with representatives of foreign governments. And when I meet with human rights advocates from abroad, they are gutted, first by the brutality and the inhumanity of the war in Gaza, and second by America's inexplicable abandonment of its commitment to human rights and justice for all. What better gift to China or Russia, our most significant adversaries, than for us to undermine the international rule of law and gut institutions of accountability that helped the U.S. create, that the U.S. helped create and work to consolidate for more than 75 years? What better gift than to say, yes, it's just fine to ignore or redefine human rights and international humanitarian law for reasons of political convenience? What should our reaction be? First, we should read the evidence contained in the ICC filing. Second, we should wait for the judges to actually rule on the warrant applications. We don't know what their decision will be. And when it comes down, if we disagree with it, we can say so. What is not okay is to attack the court's existence or threaten its personnel and their families. Republicans are already doing that in New York. It's wrong there, and it's wrong here. Finally, we should insist on credible, independent investigations of the crimes the ICC has alleged, which include, by the way, the unspeakable crimes committed by Hamas on October 7th. Surely, I hope everybody here supports the ICC's effort to hold Hamas accountable. We should also recognize the ICC's action for what it is. It's an urgent attempt at prevention. The ICC is urging Israel to change course and to stop the carnage against Palestinian civilians. It is calling upon the independent Israeli judiciary to investigate these alleged crimes and follow the evidence, no matter where it leads, before the worst unimaginable criminal charges become inevitable. They are making a complete and total mockery of the committee process. And on top of it all, we have another closed rule. Another closed rule. How pathetic. How pathetic. I mean, I get it. You may not care about the implications of some of the things that my friends say or what they bring on the floor, but at least try to go through the motions. You know, at least let's at least have a hearing. Let's have witnesses. Make believe like you care about the facts and that you're serious about legislating. Again, it's sad that this is the process that brings this bill to the floor, and with that, I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, good luck hiding behind procedural arguments when talking about defending the ICC. This is a kangaroo court, and to defend it is to defend an institution that is anti-American, anti-Israel, and anti-Semitic. But we shouldn't be shocked that this is coming from the left and the Biden administration. This administration has been weak, they've been feckless, they've been incompetent on foreign policy from now going back to when Joe Biden was sworn into office. And what are we seeing? The world is absolutely on fire. In his first year alone, President Joe Biden greenlit the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to provide Russian gas to Europe, while at the same time blocking the Keystone XL pipeline that would have actually led to energy exportation from this country. He also issued 94 executive actions on immigration, which led to an unprecedented invasion at our southern border.
Mr. Speaker, the gentleman from Pennsylvania made a point when he got up that I was somehow trying to hide behind process. It's clear he wasn't listening to my very substantive speech in which I actually talked about the policy implications of what my Republican friends were doing. But since he brought up process, and I think this is an important point to emphasize here because we are on the Rules Committee, I want to point out that sometimes I call the Rules Committee under the Republicans the Break the Rules Committee. Let's look at some of the rules that are being ignored today. And this is from the official Republican committee report, which oftentimes, maybe the gentleman doesn't read it, but sometimes I do. But let me quote, this waives all points of order against provisions in H.R. 8580 as amended, which includes Clause 2 of Rule 21, which prohibits unauthorized appropriations or legislative provisions in appropriations bills. The gentleman who just spoke routinely talks about how he is opposed to unauthorized appropriations in appropriations bills, and yet that rule was waived by the Republicans. And Clause 5 of Rule 21, which prohibits a bill or joint resolution carrying a tax or tariff measure from being reported by a committee not having jurisdiction to report tax or tariff measures. That was ruled, that was waived. But here's the big one. Here's the big one. Clause 12 of Rule 21, which prohibits consideration of a bill or joint resolution pursuant to a special order of business reported by the Committee on Rules that has not been reported by a committee. That is what is known, for my friends on the other side, that is what is known as the McGovern rule. When I was chairman of the Rules Committee, we actually put this in place, that bills that come before the Rules Committee, ought to have a hearing and a markup by a committee of jurisdiction. We weren't always perfect, but we really tried to be. We really tried to be. And so why did they waive the McGovern rule? And the reason why is because they short-circuited the legislative process. No hearings and no markup on the ICC bill. None. Not at all.
By the way, no one can amend it?
Yeah, no one can amend it as well. No amendments are made in order. And again, what was really puzzling to me was the Republican witness who came before the Rules Committee couldn't even tell us what the accurate text of the bill that we were considering was, because it had been changed so many times. It was astonishing to watch this in action. And so look, rules and process matters, because when you ignore the process, you get lousy bills. And nobody even knows what the implications of the ICC bill are. Again, you didn't have time for a hearing. You could have done an emergency hearing in the Committee of Jurisdiction. You could have done an emergency markup before it came to the Rules Committee. Just bypassed everything, kept on changing the text of the bill. That's a lousy way to legislate. And I will tell you, I can't wait until after November and my friends are no longer in charge, because we can then demonstrate, not only to my Republican friends, but to the American people, how a legislative process should work, how to get things done, how to be effective. And this is irresponsible legislating. I reserve my time.